Hello everyone. Today I'm going to show you step by step how you can build ASP.NET MVC core application connecting to a SQL Server using ADO.NET Entity Framework and then upload it to an app services within Azure, all one after another. So let's see how it looks like from scratch. So I go into an empty folder and I create a new folder. Let's say I give a name as web app, and then in that folder I'm going to open the command window. In this command window, I'm going to show you how we can use the .NET CLI. So if you just type .NET, it shows you this .NET CLI is installed in my machine, and the version is 3.1, which is the latest version I have now. And now I need to create a .NET application, and to create a .NET application you use .NET new, and the application type is MVC. You give a name as Web Azure, and this will create a folder called Web Azure. Download the template from web for model view controller or MVC web app, and restore all the NuGet packages this project requires you to have. So once the restore is successful, what we will do, we will open this application or the code folder in Visual Studio Code, and then do the application development from there. So now, to open the Visual Studio Code, first I need to go inside the newly created folder, and then I type code dot. This will open the code editor in the same folder, and then you will see all the files created. Now, just before I do anything, what I also wanted to do is that I wanted to run this application and show how it looks like. So if I say .NET run, this should idly open the application with port 5001 in localhost. And once they are ready, I can go into my browser and then type the localhost 5001. And you can see that newly created blank application, which has got few controllers like home, privacy, etc. are created. Now I go back to my Visual Studio Code, and then what I can do, I can add few things. First of all, I'm going to build it as a data-driven application. So I need a structure under which I will be defining my model class. So I'll go to the model folder, I create a new file, and I give the name as employee.cs, and that new file will have the same namespace under models, and then a class, a public class. So I'll say public class employee, and then I just have two properties. Very simple. One is ID property and another is full name property. We'll have that full name in string, and then I have full name. So this is done. So my employee class is created. Now second thing I need is that I need to use the entity framework. And to use the entity framework, you need to first bring that NuGet package in your application. So the entity framework core, so if I just say entity, is the most popular NuGet package available today. So if you go here, you will get to see the command available. So you copy that, come to the Visual Studio CLI, the .NET CLI, and then use this .NET CLI to download the entity framework core, right? We also need a couple of other references to be added. So let me add them one by one. You need like one for SQLite. So if you want to do a local development, you might need SQLite. And then you also need for SQL Server. So SQL Server, and for doing the designing and then code generation, you need Entity Framework design. So say design, and then you need tools for Entity Framework. So if I just say Entity Framework dot tools, Entity Framework tools is now available, and after which you need the Visual Studio web.codegeneration.design. So you need this, which will help you get your code or the view created from the models and the context. One small other utility library you need, which is logging.debug. And after that, the most important one, which is for refactoring, otherwise you have to handwritten write those views, is the code generator, which is already installed because I installed that design. So I just clear up the screen. Now this is sort of like ready. I go back to my Visual Studio, go inside the model and add one more file. And this time I'll name it as HR context.cs, and I use the same namespace as it is here. So I'll come back and say and I create a public class and say HR context, which will basically be taking DB context as its base class. And the DB context belongs to Entity Framework Core. So let me also refer that. You need to use a DB set for the employee model to work with it. So I will create a property, and that will be of type DB set employee. It belongs to the same namespace, so I don't have to refer, and I name it as employees. And then another thing you need is the constructor. So if I just get the constructor here, which takes a parameter like DB context options of type HR context, and I say options, using which I'll initialize the base class, that is the DB context class. So we are almost there. Now two small things you need to do. One, you need to go here in the startup and add these two references, Microsoft.Entity Framework Core, and then you need to use this model namespace, that is web azure.models, where your context class lives. And then inside the configure services, you call another service, says add DB context of type HR context, which basically uses a parameter called options, and using the lambda expression we can initialize that. Options dot use SQL Server, and here I'm gonna use the configuration connection string from configuration. So we have the configuration dot get connection string, and I get the connection string, let's say HR connection string, right? Now this is the connection string I need to create. Now how I receive that configuration, because this got initialized from here, and using the dependency injection the configuration is being referred. So it's very easy for me to really call that and then use it. So I copy the connection string name, right? And then what I can do, I can just add this connection string in my connection app setting file. So I go to the app setting.json and I add this. So I just change the name. Now this is directly using my Azure SQL database. I'll come to that later. You can have it to your local SQLite while you are doing development. It depends on you. So I am just using my actual production or live database, right? So that's fine for the demo purpose. I'll just save it. And what I now need is that right now I have got the model and the context. I need a controller, right? And then I need the view to display those controllers. And to do that, what I need is that I need to run a command in the .NET CLI, which will help you generate that code on behalf of Visual Studio Code. If you use full-blown Visual Studio, then this is basically readily available as part of a right click into the model, and then you can just say generate the code, generate the view and the control. So what this basically does, it's calling the ASP NET Core generator, and it's trying to create a controller with a name employees controller from the model employee, and then the data context is HR context, and it will be putting everything under controllers folder, and then it will create the view inside the respective views folder. So if I just hit enter and run this, what this will do, this will start building that whole application. And if everything is fine, then it will go ahead and get things downloaded, configure, and make my view ready. So this is gonna take a few moments, depending on how big or complex your project is. Once you change the model, you can always run this and then it will regenerate your view. You don't have to manually type or change anything. So this looks fine, and it created, let's say, a few files. You can see inside views folder, and inside a controllers folder, it's created the controller file. You don't have to write anything. You can go and modify, but you don't have to write anything. Now what I can do, I can say .NET build to check if my code base is fine, if there is any warning, etc. Looks like there is nothing. And then I can say .NET run to test it locally to see whether I'm able to connect to my database. Is my employee object, employees table is going to get me the data. So let me just run that. And because I don't have any link in my home page, I just need to manually type it. I say employees, and if I'm able to connect to the database using the connection string, it will retrieve the record. We have right now 3 records. You can see that these are all test records. You can go and change them as well. Now we are almost ready. What I need is that I need to now move this code into my Azure. But before I really move this code into the Azure, what I wanted to quickly do is a very convenient thing in my layout page, that I want to create a link. So if I say, instead of home, if I say employees, and then I just give a name here, employee, then this link will be part of my application. So let me see if this looks fine, and then I go ahead and then run the .NET run again. You can also do that from VS Code, but I prefer the .NET CLI because it gives me much more control here. So I come over here and say localhost, and if you see here, the localhost now has got a link called employee. I click on that employee link. This gonna go ahead and show me the page, so we are good to go. Now because I'm almost done, what I can do, I can use the Visual Studio and use this Azure extension which I have installed to create an app service and then upload my application over there. Or simply what I can do, I can run a command to produce this application for final deployment either to Azure or anywhere, right? That remains the same, using the .NET CLI. So if I just use this .NET publish, it'll create a release version of my application code to a folder called publish in the root directory. If I hit that, the compiler will start working here, compile the code, make the necessary files, and put it in the publish folder. And if I just go inside my Visual Studio, I'll see now new folder called publish is available. It is created with some content. What I can do now, I can right click here and say deploy to web app. So if I say deploy to web app, it asks me which subscription I want to connect to. If I'm doing it for the first time, this will ask me to log in, but let me just use the already logged in subscription list, and then I can either select a new web app or I can pick up an existing web app. So depending on how you want to do that. So I'll say web demo WG, just to make sure that it is unique, not being used by anyone. And if I hit enter here, this will kickstart the application, kickstart few steps. First of all, this will create a resource group in Azure. Then it will create a web app, and then it will deploy my application. So after this starts deploying the application, you can also see that live streamed output, the logs coming from Azure to your Visual Studio Code, and in the output window, by selecting the app services, you'll be able to see, or you can click on the link over here in the small pop-up window which comes below, which is part of your extension, will also lead you to same deep link of the output window. So this is gonna take few moments depending on the size of the file, the speed of your internet connection, etc., etc. And then once this whole step is done, there will be a small window showing up, will be appearing in the bottom of the VS Code, which will also allow you to browse to the website. So we will just wait for this whole process to get completed, and then we'll come back over here. But before that, I want to take you to a step back and then walk you through some of the things I have done for my SQL Server database. So what I have used here in this demo, I have used this already created Azure SQL database, which is a platform as a service database offering. and this is the database, and I can use this connection string to connect to my database from any application supporting any of these way. So I can use either Go, PHP, ODBC, JDBC, ADO.NET. So I picked up ADO.NET because I'm using entity framework and then connected to that. But I'm not connecting this using the user ID and password, which is super admin. So I created a new password and then using it. So I'll show you how I did that. So this is the database you can see here, and then inside the database server you have databases. So this is the one I'm using, and I created a login here called demo WG, and then in this demo WG, what I have done, I have created this as an user in my database, and after that user is created, I assign them as a DB owner, and hence I'm using it. So you should always be doing that. So you will see the password visible, but that's only for that database and will be deleted once this is over. Now this deployment is completed. You can just click on the browse website. And because I was already using my Azure SQL database, it basically will be working without any change. Otherwise, I should be having a separate connection string in my app settings or in the website configuration through my deployment script. So let me click on the employees, and then I should be able to see the same 3 record. Now notice here the URL, it's not the local host anymore. It's the Azure websites.net. Now I can say test ASP MVC, and then if I just hit create, and this should add here, I can delete the one which is not relevant anymore. I can even edit a record, give a full name. So I can do all sort of stuff which is completely live. Just to show you that, you can just say new query, and then check the database values in the actual database, right? So let me say select star from employee. That's the table I'm using. Let me see the name of that employees, and then if I just run, this should show you this record, this record, this record, 3 records. I deleted one, that is number ID 3, which was ID 3. You can see there is a skip here. So with this, I want to end this demo, and thank you for watching.